here. So first of all, we have tripods available for you to check out. And the main thing with these tripods is just to know that they're, I mean, okay, I'm going to say it, they're cheap. They're cheap, but not so cheap that I want to have to buy a whole bunch more of them if they get broken. So just know that like the same thing that makes them so nice and light and portable is the fact that they're made out of cheap materials. You know, I mean, aluminum is not cheap, but the plastic, you know, if this were like cast aluminum, it would boost up the weight. So it's like the trade-off is like this is really a much nicer thing to carry around with you on a shoot than a more professional weight, you know, big heavy tripod. But it just means you have to be careful with the plastic parts. Like don't throw it into the trunk of your car because this will probably break off. And when the more common thing, because I know y'all aren't going to throw these things around, but the more common place that these get broken is from over tightening or trying to adjust something without loosening it first because there was some kind of adjustment that needed to be turned to loosen up the tension so that you could then move it. And so like this one, you know, it's just got little flippy things. Pretty sure that's a technical photo too. Flippy chuchuts is what we call them down here though. Flippy things like the New Yorkers say that. These are flippy chuchuts. And just a logistical thing when you're setting up a tripod, pull all the legs to whatever height you think you want first and then open it up. Rather than going, okay, I want it low, open up all the legs and then start like, you know, trying to pull with all that. So even if I'm adjusting it like I decided I want it lower and I already had all the legs out, I'll keep them closed in. I'll open the flippy chuchuts. I'll push it straight down. And now they're all even and level because, you know, they were lined up on the floor, and that's a lot easier. So that's one thing. The other thing to kind of know about tripods, and this is just general tripod savviness, is look at the diameter of these legs. The thicker sections are more stable. So actually, if I want to use this at a lower level, but I really want good stability, the lower flippy chuchuts are the ones that should get folded in. Because now it's relatively speaking thicker legs that are supporting the camera. If it's a really crucial situation, that's what you would want to do. So I feel like as your photo teacher, I should mention that. Honestly, a lot of the time I am far too lazy and I reach for the flippy chuchuts that are closest and I lower it from there. But you know, but I still know that I should be doing it with the lower ones. So now you have that same baggage. So on that same general philosophy, you also have a center column that raises. On these, the important thing to do is look for something that loosens in order to raise it up. So like the hand crank on this tripod, this particular model, you know, it's it's not going to stay put unless you actually tighten down the little set screw in the side. Some of them have kind of a collar that you turn to loosen. We do have sort of a mishmash of brands, courtesy of a lot of nice donations and stuff like that. So just look for something when you go to raise the center column up that's going to either create or loosen tension before you just like just don't crank it, you know, and assume that everything's all good because you'll strip it. Then if you have the type of tripod, this is actually more of a video characteristic than others. This little guy is actually a control. So when it's stored for travel, this would be folded down, but I want this platform, you know, level. So I just turn this like a quarter of a turn and that loosens it up enough, and then I can turn it back and now it's stable. So that's sort of like a, it's like a hidden, no, as long as I lock it back. So it's like a set screw, in other words. If I loosen it, this can go wherever. But when it's at the height that I want it at, I do that, and now my camera's not very tip.
But it never goes, it's connected to whatever the level is. It's not ever gonna fall down out of the way, like the hand.
This, no, 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 yeah, I mean, you use this in the operation of the tripod, yeah. And this particular one, some of them, I try not to check out the ones that won't allow you to shoot with your camera tipped to a vertical situation. Let's see, how do you flip? How do you flip? You flip that way, okay, so you're good. This, can you tell it's homemade? Yeah, probably.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
That's some Sinker
That's
Cypress I use. So this is here because if I were to order, and I did look it up online apparently at one point and write it on here. If you lose this little stupid plastic thing, this is called a quick release plate. It costs almost as much to order a replacement as it does to just buy a new tripod. But me and my environmental self really doesn't want to throw away that much plastic and aluminum that's perfectly good. But I'm also loath to order for, you know, $12 a replacement plate plus $7.95 shipping. So then I go to YouTube and I learn how to make new quick release plates, which, you know, for the amount of time it took me are probably about $50 a piece, but I did it for free, so. But aren't they nice? They're like, I made a little quilted design so they would, you know, hang on.
very tricky, very, very smart.
Kind of nice and aesthetic, two different kinds of wood for
So
contrast.
how many,
But mostly I have normal ones that
why
I'm
didn't
using.
you do the whole camera case? Come on, Jen.
I knew she was
I know
going
you can do
somewhere
that.
with that, man.
Have you seen Deb? You should see Deb's boxes she has. That,
Oh, the art,
they're so awesome.
I have to bring some more in. I have to do that little visiting artist show, like the visiting, not visiting artist show. I think they just call it an artist lecture. So this, I'm going to tilt it for the video and for you in the classroom to see. The idea with all these is that there's sort of an overhang so that then when this is pushed down, it locks in. And so now the camera is stable on the tripod. Almost all tripods are made this way nowadays, but it's called a quick release because say you have your scene set up and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's exactly what I want. Crap, I forgot the meter. And if your subject's a long way away, you really need to take the camera over to the light where the subject is. So no problem, you haven't wasted your time with your setup because this quick release is gonna know exactly where to put the camera back to you. So you know, go over to your subject, activate the meter, do all your little settings, come back, and you're still at the same position you established before. And it's also nice just simply because when you're walking around with it, this isn't so annoying to actually have on your camera. So you can be out shooting while you have this tripod in the car, taking your regular pictures, and then when you decide, oh yeah, I want a tripod shot, your camera's ready to attach to it. And frankly, that's where a lot of these wind up going, is because you get so used to just being on the bottom of your camera that you forget, and then you turn the tripod in without it. But I've learned, and I usually ask. So that's the deal with the quick.
Do you have?
Enough so everyone can have one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, with this size, we're a fairly big class, but I'm pretty confident. I mean, that gray cabinet by Kyle is full of tripods. So, and this is like one of the crappiest ones. That's why it's out here. So there's not, oh, it's down low. It's not that cabinet. It's a stealth cabinet. It's this thing that's locked up down here.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. He's like, really? Because those look like light stands, Dad. I don't want to put my camera in there. So that, and then if you want to go to take a portrait format, there's going to be a little thing that you turn to release that as well. All these things have various little flippy places and things to loosen up so that you can adjust them. If I want to turn this, don't just turn it without looking for something to loosen to allow that to happen. See, now it's locked in, so it can't pivot left to right. It's this thing that loosens it. This is actually one of the more common places they get broken too, is that people forget that and they just push it. And what happens is the screws that are actually attaching the tripod head to the center column section, it threads it just loose enough to then strip as it's wobbling around in your trunk, and then it is time to get a new tripod. So, so with all these, really, just the take-home lesson is look for something that's supposed to release tension before you make an adjustment, because there's probably something somewhere that turns. And so for the sake of the video, sometimes it's going to be something like this guy, you know, loosen this up and see what moves, you know.
I'll probably
And-
do something and my camera will fall off.
Well, you could do it before the camera gets much. Or the other thing you could do is, you know, hang onto the camera while you do that. That's a good point. Yeah. That said, hey, when you put this on, this quick release, these aren't going to be familiar objects to you. You haven't done this before. So, you know that usually, I mean, you can see this kind of angled little foot that it's got. Tip it forward, tuck it under that ledge, and then expect there to be sort of a angled thing that comes in like kind of a cantilever and pushes over the top of it. But, you know, before you let go, just, I mean, if you can pick up the tripod with the camera, your camera's not going to fall off it. Just test it first. You know, there's no, you're not going to do any harm to doing that. I've dropped my camera completely off the top of a tripod before from not having that done. When I really should have known better. I've been shooting for a long time at that point. So it can happen to everybody. Yes, it can. But, you know, if I'd just not been cocky and I'd done that, it wouldn't happen. So now you know how to get your camera on and off of the tripod. You know that you know, just want to look for whatever adjustments might be in control of locking the settings in before you ratchet things up or down. And then finally, again, if you can gain height through the leg setting, because that's 3 legs coming in, that's going to give you a lot more stability than if you have just like the leg set really low and you go, well, I'll just crank up the center column. Like, this stalk is obviously way less stable than if it's down here. So that's just, you know, if you're really in a situation where you need the camera to be super stable, maybe it's kind of windy out or something. Let me adjust the video to make sure, yes, there, that we can see it. So here's a cool trick. Some tripods even have a hook on the bottom of here, and you'd think like, what is that, for storing it? No, it's so that you can take any kind of heavy object and hang it from that center column, because that's creating more, it's essentially making it a heavier tripod. And so even just ones with these three-piece sections, I mean, you could kind of loop your camera bag on there and then put a book in it or something. Just anything heavy that you can cause to, oh, look at that. Oh, hello. So you could even unclip your camera bag, as long as it's not touching the ground. That would sort of defeat the purpose. Maybe we straighten that. And then load it with heavy stuff, like Windex. Other than the cameras. That stabilizes it a lot, actually. Although, of course, again, if you have a pulse, you sort of have a problem with shaking the camera.
Bring a brick.
Yeah. Nice light tripod, so I have to travel with a brick.
Brick in my backpack.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But you'll get resourceful of looking around. Yeah, exactly, and being like, okay, what do I have? You know. So so those are some basics about holding it still.